We want to get some answers now, and who better to have here than Penny Nance? Penny Nance, Concerned Women.
Hi.
Hello, how are you?
Oh, it's an honor to be on with you. Congratulations on the show.
Thank
you.
I appreciate
It's fantastic.
Yeah, the president and CEO, of course, of Concerned Women for America. Hey, you spent a lot of time on the Hill. How widespread is this? I mean, I'm wondering if this is just the tip of the iceberg here.
Well, listen, there is people are broken. As Christians, we should recognize that and know that. And predators don't prey on the powerful; they prey on the weak. And you know, when you have unchecked egos and a touch of narcissism, things sometimes go badly and go wrong. And I think that, we have, I was with my mother-in-law over Thanksgiving, and she's like, this isn't a new story. Like, women of my generation have plenty of stories to tell. And I said, that's correct. I agree. But we don't have to sit still and allow it to continue. And that's really, I think, we were talking about earlier, you were talking about having the conversation, I think Senator Langford said. I compare it to turn on the light and watching the cockroaches scatter. We are cleaning up. You need the disinfectant of the light in order to clean this up. Yes, I think this is a big issue. I think it's always been there, but having the conversation, I think, is helpful, and it actually brings closure and helps people to step forward. I have a real problem with the idea that we, as the taxpayer, have been footing the bill for the bad behavior and the settlements for congressmen. I have called publicly for that information to be released. I'd like to know who we've paid for.
Yeah. We'll be on top of that.
Penny, for Christian women in particular, I think there's a big conflict. They see these politicians who stand for Judeo-Christian values, but then a lot of times they don't seem to be living it out. What is your advice for these women?
Well, not always is that the case. There's a lot of liberal members that have been accused as well. I think you may be talking about Joe Barton, who is talking about a consensual relationship, but I think should resign just for being an idiot, frankly. But, so we're not talking about anything illegal here, but we're talking about just horrible judgment. But, as Christian women, again, we shouldn't be surprised any more than anyone else, because we recognize that we are sinners. And we also know, and I think for the Christian community, I think this is an issue. People like you, David, and I've known David for a really long time, are such solid, godly men that you almost can't fathom this kind of behavior. But let me just assure you that it's real. As a 20-something, I have my own story to tell. And it's unconscionable. So people of faith that are just, godly men and women have a hard time wrapping their head around it. But out in the world, and perhaps the world you don't know, it's real. And it's an issue, and we need to be on the side of the weak. We need to be on the side of the broken. Yes, there has to be a process. Absolutely, there has to be a way for people to go forward, and listen, unfortunately, we learned a hard lesson with the Duke lacrosse team, and we learned a hard lesson with University of Virginia, and we learned a hard lesson with Lena Dunham's book. And so there has to be context, and there has to be the ability for people to ask questions. But we need to also understand that this is a real issue.
I want to ask about context.
Yes.
And I know we've talked about that, but context matters here. And I'm wondering, look, we want to believe the women,
right.
But when you come out a month before in the Roy Moore case or so, people are going to wonder, they're going to question, they, not me, not anybody here at this table, but they're going to question some of the credibility that goes with that. So talk to me about the context of what women are saying, and we want to believe the woman, and at the same time, the credibility kind of factors into it too in terms of context as well.
You showed a clip earlier of Anita Hill. Anita Hill followed Clarence Thomas from job to job to job and then complained, right? No one else ever followed up against Clarence Thomas, and it was politically motivated. I don't believe Anita Hill. Let me just tell you that. But I do believe the vast majority of women. I've experienced it myself. It's okay, though, to ask questions. We have the example of Potiphar's wife in the Bible. We have classic literature like To Kill a Mockingbird that tells us to take into the context of race, in the context of the brokenness of man. it is okay to ask questions. It is appropriate to ask questions because, you know, I'd like to say that women are always morally superior to men, but the truth is we're not. We're sinners too. And so it's appropriate. However, again, we can't use that as an excuse to turn away our heads from suffering. And it is real suffering because it's always the weakest that are preyed upon.
Penny Nance with Concerned Women for America.
Thank
you so much for being
Thanks,
here.
It's great being here.
Great to
God
see
bless
you.
you.
Great to
Thanks.
see you.